Hello, everyone. My name is James Burkhart, and this isn't anything. I know I've been doing. Well, this is a rant, but I know I've been doing. I stopped doing this. I stopped doing the podcast. What happened? Did not. I'm the stuff I wanted to talk about was stuff of substance, and I couldn't. I couldn't talk about it. I needed to have reference material. Um, I needed to have a framework, a script. I can't do any of that with this format. So, and that's not why I was doing these. I wasn't doing these to be that kind of a channel. I just wanted to kind of rant while I was driving. I got a massive commute. Didn't work out. So, moving into a new, uh, but I couldn't be silent today. I'm so frustrated. So, it's the 8th. Last night we had Trump. Everyone gave time to Trump to do a what's the word to do a propaganda speech, um, and that is apparently it was in fact not just a propaganda speech, but it was a campaign fundraising event, uh, paid for by every cable news and broadcast news network in the country. Ugh. He did a lot of lying about the wall. I'm not gonna try to get into the specifics, but he used numbers and statistics that we already know are conflating various things, suggesting lesser, suggesting anyone who ever had who wasn't just waved through security is a terrorist, who was barred from the country. Um, if any scrutiny was put on you, uh, saying that everyone we interdicted that was a known or suspected terrorist was coming across the Mexican border, uh, rather than the fact that like maybe that less than 1% are maybe 1% are Mexicans crossing are people crossing the Mexican border. Let's not say Mexicans, because that's part of the problem with it is um, the Mexican border is not the danger, and he's moved to this border security angle because what he really wants to do is just bar people from entering from Mexico. Um, the we know now that the wall was initially conceived by his team as a way to get him to talk about immigration, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. Oh, you've probably lost audio with that, haven't you? Okay, let's get that back in. Uh, so, um, as I'm saying, this is it's a, it's a, there is a lot of things that Trump is doing and Trump is talking about. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors about, and the numbers he's talking about aren't real. They're real numbers, but they don't, they're what they're saying with those numbers aren't the things those numbers say. They're misattributing the numbers and making them look like a more dangerous problem than they are. Um, because of that, it's a this whole it's the thing, and we've been seeing it for a year. We had 2 years. A wall never came up for a vote. We had a big fight over it last year, where Trump threatened to shut down the government over the wall. Uh, there was a promise there'd be talk about a wall, and he signed the resolution. But there really wasn't talk of a wall. I'm going to theorize that Mitch McConnell knows that he can't that he's not going to get a wall through uh, on its own. He needs to attach it to must pass legislation because that's how he's going to get the wall through. I mean, it's a trick is it's been a common trick uh um of both sides, but I've seen it a lot by the Republicans and um so my time really paying attention to politics is uh started in 2008. Well, before that, well, yeah, no, it started in 2008, 2009. Um, that's when I started going to college, or when I went back to college and actually took it seriously and tried to and so that's when I actually started paying attention to the circumstances of people around me. I was realizing the problems, and I started to actually have to question my core political beliefs, and that's when I moved from moderate, calling myself libertarian, uh, to liberal, leftist ideology. That's where that shift happened. And in that time, that's when I started paying attention, and I've seen the tactic most often used by Republicans to move through their uh, unpopular policies, especially where they couldn't get a supermajority, and they wanted to get Barack Obama to sign their unpopular, sign off on their unpopular. So, but I know over the history of our government, that is a tactic used by both sides to get unpopular legislation through. Is um, attaching it to must pass bills. Uh, so uh, it's a um, they tried that, and we've shut down the government. What I said before this, and I'll say this now: Trump had a deal. You know, he had a baseline, what the courts might consider the last uncontested status. It's not doesn't quite apply. It's not quite correct, but it's one of the things you do with when you're resolving a rates dispute. Is you start by reaching the point at which everyone agrees what the rights were, and then figure out where the breakdown happens and adjudicate that. So everyone agreed. Continuing the resolution, keep the government open. Um, then we had there was a bit of a cable news there was a talking head blow up about it. I think it was like Hannity and Coulter, and then suddenly we're not looking at we're no longer looking at a deal. We now have Trump saying no, it needs to have funding for a wall. What's strange is, since that point, that wall has become steel slats, and then a fence, and then a wall, and then a steel wall. So it's not quite. It's never been clear what Trump is actually asking money for. It's a barrier, but like, is he planning to replace the existing fencing? Does this all need to be done on new land? I mean, are we talking most of this $5 billion going to uh to eminent domain land grabs? I don't know, but and that's kind of the problem. I don't think I can ever justify funding the wall with the plan as it's currently in place. The Trump administration has asked us to give him money for this wall, for the executive branch to then spend building this wall, but there's no plan already in place for spending that money. It's just a number that was thrown out there. But so Trump stops. He's like, no, I'm not gonna do this. I am gonna I'm gonna own this. It is the Trump shutdown. You're gonna give me a wall. And then he shuts down the government. He says, so now the Democrats did it. We passed. The Senate got passed a bill. So now that absolves me of anything for this. McConnell is weirdly toadying to Trump. In this whole process, um, he could do, he could take pressure off Senate Republicans by passing a straight resolution, sending it to Trump's desk, and then forcing Trump to veto it, and then okay, it's Trump. No, he's protecting Trump. He's not gonna send anything to Trump that he doesn't know Trump is going to uh, sign, which is a very ego protective move that I don't entirely understand from him. I don't understand why we're getting into that kind of a game with this. We're talking about funding the government. We're talking about soldiers. We're talking about the paychecks of soldiers. We're talking about border security. This is supposed to be all about border security. TSA is collapsing as people have begun to quit over not getting paid, which they rightfully should. Every time, last time we had a shutdown of this length, the government was paying enormous penalties to everyone that was forced to work. Because that, and so this is fiscally responsible, right? And let me be clear. We've had two big shutdowns in the time we had the time I've been alive. We had the one in the Clinton era, which led to the balanced budgets, which we give credit to Clinton, a lot of credit to Clinton for the starting to pay down the debt, the budget surplus. That in part was fueled by a Republican shutdown, with to force a balanced budget. I mean, the next president, the Republican president that followed him, just shoved in policy after policy after policy of spending, but without any of that restraint that we were seeing in the Clinton era, which is, I think, is one of the reasons I give Clinton, I give the Clinton administration some of the credit, because clearly they, the Clinton administration took that, balanced budget spending to heart in its processes. So there is some validity to giving it to the administration as well. And then there was another one during the Obama era, over cutting spending. And they quickly came to a compromise, where they had to do things, or we'd end up with sequestration. That backfired a little bit because no one did come to a compromise. We got sequestration, and then there's a lot of grumbling that we're being forced to make cuts on both sides. So Republicans past have done shutdowns that are about some really principled stuff. We had 3 shutdowns in 2017. I think. Or we've had 3 or 4 shutdowns in this administration. And the administration has significantly cut revenue, and Congress has significantly cut revenue, but hasn't really done anything about dealing with the expense side consequences. If you're gonna cut revenue, that's okay, but you can't be the. I mean, sorry, that's not part of this. Okay, so we're now in this fight. It's a weird fight. The Republicans are defending the president's decision. They really feel they need this win on immigration. It couldn't be done in the last 2 years. It had to be done in these 2 years, and now we're shutting down the government, and there are a lot of problems. And we've got master negotiator Trump. We've got the art of the writer of the art of the deal. He didn't write it. The guy who the guy who's negotiated business deals all over the world. This the master real estate developer, big businessman. We have him as president. Surely he can negotiate, right? Every time, but the problem, and it quickly turns out, no, he can't. We've seen him negotiate in this fight a couple times. There was the one in which he literally tried to surprise Pelosi and Schumer by saying, guess what? We're going to have the cameras in here, and then you watch the cameras as he kind of blusters and realizes that, there's this moment where they say, hey, we should take this we should take this private. No, let's do this publicly. Don't make us refute your statistics publicly. One of the greatest things, the ideas of a leader is, they knew as a leader they didn't want to undermine him as a leader by telling the world on camera, you're wrong, here's how you're wrong. And here's Trump saying, no, go ahead, prove to the world I don't know what I'm talking about. And he basically was, 500-pound gorillaing it. He's like, I'm gonna, I'm the big man here, gonna do what I say. Me and my Lyndon B. Johnson, we're gonna win. Think about it. So he's trying to big man it. He's trying to shove everyone aside. That's not a negotiating tactic. I'm gonna shut down the government unless you give me what I want. That's how a 3-year-old negotiates. Just today, we heard that he went into negotiations with Democrats and was like, if I do this, will you guarantee me within a month you'll give me my wall? No. Then this isn't worth it. And he walks out. From what we've been told, he isn't negotiating on the wall. He just wants the wall. He assumed that when Pelosi became speaker, she'd roll over. We know he thinks that he's got that this government is a truly corrupt government. And for what a lot of people think, we are not currently facing a truly corrupt government. And so we're looking at this. We're looking at this government, and he, it's got some issues. It's got some serious issues, where it's removed from the populace. But Pelosi, he did not expect Pelosi and the Democrats to take a principled stance. He assumed that Pelosi was going to get speakership, get everyone's backer, become speaker, and then she'll just cut. She'll back Trump's play, because she got the power she wanted. Now he's like, look, if I concede and open the government, will you within a month give me my wall? Like, just a tight timetable from a legal perspective, from a government perspective. Especially on something that's it's been a month and we don't seem to have any movement on it. No one seems to be aware of what's happening, right? I don't understand. So, there. I mean, it just like, and then he walked out. That's not how you negotiate. It's not worth negotiating with them. They're not going to budge. Well, I mean, have you really been trying to negotiate? You don't seem to be giving us anything. You suggested maybe, oh, let's give you another, 2 billion for humanity for humanitarian aid. I mean, is that actually? I mean, you have a you have a charity that just got shut down because you're using it like your checkbook. Why should we give you money for charity? Um, it's I just keep like we don't know he hasn't ever given. I feel like if he would nail down what it is, he'd submit an actual plan. Like, what areas does he want this wall to cover? I don't know. I need the funding first. No, no, go. Ask for help. Go for broke. Ask for $1 million to put down an entire to have a crack team, architects, and and everyone go through and show us what and accountants and everything you need to go through and plan and build an outline of the wall, what it would cost, what it would cost in land rights, what the impact would be. Spend a year doing that. End of the year budget fight at the end of 2019. You can then come and say, look, here's what I want. I want X amount. This is what it's going to be built of. This is give me something concrete, and then maybe we can talk. I personally think a wall is a really stupid idea. It's not only fiscally irresponsible, but a wall, the kind of wall we're talking about, just has no purpose. It is a 2000 BC problem, or solution to a problem we don't even have. You use a wall to stop invading armies. There is not a border that is perfect, and the problem is unless it's perfect, it's the very relatively small amount of people crossing that Mexican border aren't going to do anything. It's not going to affect them. Maybe it'll affect the Canadian border, which is a far worse problem for illegal immigration. But Trump isn't talking about the Canadian border. I'd ask why, but he expressly stated he wants people he wants European descended people illegally entering the country. So I don't know how you can say that's not racist. Uh, um, crime issues. Canada's worse. Illegal immigration. Canada's worse. We're looking at our the major problem, the one that the wall won't even touch. People coming in legally. Um, we've got millions of people crossing that border, or hundreds of thousands of people crossing that border a day. Um, the Mexican border a day. We've got orders of magnitude more coming in through our airports. And you know what? And people crossing those borders legally and coming in through docks, and they're entering legally, and then they're overstaying. They are overstaying their visa. That is the key. That is the worst. At least double. Um, when it comes to the numbers for 2018, we're looking at more than double uh, the number of illegal immigrants uh, just trying to cross the border, not through border control, are people who are legally entering through border control and then just staying. And guess what? Canada's worse there too. Like if the wall solves any of these problems, it shouldn't be built at the Mexican border. It should be built at the Canadian. So I don't think a wall is a good thing. But one of the things that year-long task force, I suggest we give him funding for, should do is analyze, a wall at the border. Here's the numbers we're seeing, the actual number of people crossing the border that we can estimate are crossing that border illegally, and the wall, and what we believe the shrinkage of a wall is. Give Trump give Trump's what is known as steel manning his argument. Give him a chance to present his argument in the best possible light. And then we can actually have a rational discussion about this. But for Trump, it's not about rationality. It's about FUD, fear, uncertainty, distrust. I saw this recently, and I don't know that it's true, but it did get me thinking, because I do know that there are at least some elements of truth in it. But there's a lot of Nazi allegories going around, but the Nazis took power explicitly by creating a fake emergency and giving Hitler emergency powers. That's what this image claimed. I'm pretty sure that I do know that the Nazi Party was largely in the minority. He had to build a coalition government, I believe, and I believe I do believe it was an emergency that was used to get him the war powers that he had. But I very much could be wrong on that. But it plays on that idea. He is attempting to generate false outrage, and then use that false outrage and use that false cry of there's an emergency, I need to save us, to get things done that we couldn't do otherwise. So I'm really frustrated because the news networks gave him that time. We knew the only question about last night was whether or not he was going to declare a national emergency. Whether he was going to do it right then and there. We've heard that in his talks today he said, "Look, I've addressed the country, now you need to work with me." Like he's trying to find the button, like, oh, this is the button that says make Democrats do what I tell them. Reminds me of someone who was dealing with it was a fiction novel, and so it was a true AI kind of virtual reality experience, but that sort of thing wasn't supposed to exist. So he assumed it was like a standard text parser video game. They're looking for the very specific phrase, maybe a handful of specific phrases, and once you find that specific phrase, it unlocks it unlocks the puzzle, and it unlocks the dialogue option, and you can keep going. And that's what Trump kind of feels like to me right now. He's trying to find that word, that phrase. How can I say this that suddenly it's okay to Democrats. He's not treating them like people who can understand that when he says steel slats, he doesn't mean, he doesn't mean anything other than a wall. That the same policy which we've been fighting because it doesn't make monetary sense. Also, small note, you might have noticed he keeps going back, like he'll say, Democrats didn't like concrete, so it's going to be steel, but it's going to be a steel wall now. Why does he do that? And then, he did the steel slats thing for a while before going back to the word wall. Why is he doing that? Well, interestingly, one of his current talking points is the fact that his steel tariffs are making, are boosting American steel money expenditures, and American steel is being made again, and so he's trying to, harp that he has succeeded at steel. Um, so if you're ever wondering why he's talking, he suddenly concrete is out and steel is in, um, even though it's more expensive, even though it's going to make it less likely we're going to go for the wall, because it's all about signaling to his base. One of the things we've discovered, interestingly, when you start doing political speaking, is a lot of political speaking isn't being spoken to the person. You're told if someone's doing a campaign rally, a lot of the speech isn't actually to the people visiting. It's not to the people, most of the people watching. It's to specific backers and specific interests, and you're signaling. Um, so when Trump talks steel, he's not. It's it can be, might consider it related to the idea of the dog whistle. Um, so when Trump starts talking about steel, he's not about having a steel wall. He's not talking to steel worker. I mean, he's not talking to you or me about a steel wall. He's telling the steel industry, I'm gearing up to buy. We're going to gear up and we're going to buy steel. He's trying to boost confidence there in the steel industries, or signal his support for, that he is going to put in place policies that'll benefit these industries. It's all a massive uh, corruption game of corruption with him. People will tell me Trump doesn't make any money. Trump donates his salary. Trump donates his salary. He's still CEO of his businesses. His golf, membership fees at his golf course have doubled. So have greens fees. He had a party at Mar-a-Lago over the break where he was supposed to be present, where costs to be there have gone up like an order of magnitude because you're gonna buy access to the president. Um, it's been noted that visitation at a lot of his hotels, at his DC hotel specifically, has gone up. The restaurants in that hotel have seen increases in business because Donald Trump owns them. He's the president. He's making money. He is using the president to increase his personal wealth. And then he's signaling outwardly to the public, hey, steel companies, support me. Don't worry, I got your back. Hey, I'm cool with all those white guys illegally immigrate, or presumably white, um, European descended people illegally immigrating into our country. I say that because really I can't say that it isn't people who are traveling to Canada and then traveling into the U.S. I don't know that they are Canadian in origin. I know they're crossing the Canadian border. Well, actually, no. Overstays are Canadian citizens because we track it by the type of passports. So, Canadian issued passports are the highest overstays. I'm okay, but Canada is a largely European descended country, so presumably white immigrants overstaying their visas. Trump is totally cool with that. Oh, but 3% of the families seeking asylum might get lost and not actually, and instead of coming, might lose themselves in America instead of coming to a court case. So I need to put everyone in cages. Drugs don't enter the country across open border. They go through border control. Just put in sealed areas that border control won't notice them. That's how that's not some weird thing. That is the DEA. That's how the DEA tells us drugs are getting into this country. Border's not stopping. Border wall ain't stopping that. Tell me what that border's supposed to stop, because I don't see anything. I said it during his candidacy. Trump is a real estate developer. He does real estate deals. And his signature policy is a massive, massive construction project. Real estate deals, amongst other things, are known for how easy it is to find places to pad the expense sheet. They are great money sinks. In fact, that's why large real estate became a big thing in the 90s. Why we got so many malls or even earlier than that. Why we got so many malls is because they're great money sinks. It's long stated that it was revealed within the past 2 years that Trump Senior had a pattern uh, within his last like 30 years of dispersing his wealth to his children, and hiding it and avoiding taxes in part by hiding it in real estate deals, and hiding these payouts within real estate deals. So my question is, a president who knows he knows um, that the government is corrupt, believes that the government is there to serve his interests, and is upset with his former attorney general because that attorney general did not protect him from criminal prosecution. So a corrupt executive who has been a beneficiary of utilizing real estate construction scams to pass large amounts of money without to pass large amounts of money without incurring financial penalty, is proposing we build an obscenely expensive construction project along the Mexican border in defiance of fiscal sense, in defiance of reality, and just lying about why it needs to be done. You don't think maybe there's a reason?